Those are all the top headlines that we are tracking from the world of commodities. But first up, let's put the spotlight on the kind of moves that we are seeing in the oil and the gold market. So Brent crude is currently trading absolutely flat near that $66.2 per barrel mark. But remember, all eyes are on that all-important meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin that is expected to happen in Alaska on Friday. So any kind of outcome with respect to a peace deal that could be signed between Russia and Ukraine could be a big trigger for the oil market, because that could mean rising supply of oil from Russia in the global oil market, and that could push oil prices lower. Remember, currently it is trading near that $66-67 per barrel mark. But we also had some important commentary that came in from OPEC Plus monthly report yesterday, where OPEC Plus has now raised world demand forecast by 1 lakh barrels per day for 2026, and they say higher demand growth and lower non-OPEC Plus supply is likely to aid oil prices going forward and oil demand going forward. So those are some of the factors which they believe will aid oil market in calendar year 2026 as well. But shifting focus to the yellow metal market then, spot gold is trading absolutely flat today to trade near $3,345 per ounce mark. But remember, US inflation data which came in yesterday evening was exactly in line with what the street was working with, and traders are now awaiting some more clarity on tariff imposition of gold imports. Remember, last week there were some reports which suggested that US President Donald Trump could impose additional tariffs on import of gold into the United States. That was of course clarified yesterday that there will be no such tariffs, but traders still await some more clarity and official confirmation that could come in from the White House. So that's as far as gold and oil market is concerned. But as promised, let's shift focus to India's tea industry then. Tea production for the month of June this year came in at about 133 million kg, which is a decline of about 9% versus same month last year. Adverse weather conditions and pest attacks led to the fall in tea production on a year-on-year basis. In fact, if we look at the region-wise performance, production in northern India fell by 7% YoY in June, while decline in southern India was even severe at about 17% on a year-on-year basis. To discuss what led to this and what are the demand trends looking like, we are now joined by Mr. Arijit Raha, Secretary General at Indian Tea Association, now joining us. Mr. Raha, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. Tea production has declined over the last several months. I understand it is partly because of adverse weather conditions, but if you can tell us, when is this expected to revive? Is it anytime soon in the next few months?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on your show. Well, yes, you're right. The tea production has fallen, and we are finding very climate change per se is creating variations that are unprecedented. For example, if you take the July figures up to July, if you take, up from January to July, overall Assam production is up by 4.6%, but the organized sector's production is down by 0.86%. Now, just to give the perspective, the production that comes into the system is produced by the bigger gardens, which are the corporates, and you also have the small tea growers. So we are finding a peculiar phenomenon in the same climate zone, in the same area. The bigger gardens production has fallen. There's been some marginal increase that we are finding in the production the small tea growers. Similarly, in West Bengal also, January to July figures are actually quite high. It's about 26%. But the increase contributed by the big growers, who are the dominant players, is just about 1%. So this is obviously happening due to climatic conditions. We have very base temperature has gone up. The number of hot days have gone up. Rainfall patterns have gone awry, and really speaking, due to various factors, including pests, we are finding this phenomenon. I do not climate with external interventions.
Okay, so those are primarily the reasons which led to the fall in production in the last few months. But if you can tell us, given how rainfall has been so far and given how the climate has shaped up, What is the outlook on tea production for the rest of this calendar year then?
Well, it's difficult to tell. It's difficult to tell because, as I said, that rainfall patterns as they are and the temperatures that are going up, which is a matter of concern, it is creating a lot of abiotic stress. When you suddenly have rainfall and it comes in a spurge, it often creates to waterlogging that also becomes detrimental. So therefore, it is very difficult to predict how the next few months will go.
So it's difficult to predict, and I understand that point. But let's now shift focus, Mr. Raha, to demand trends then, especially export demand, because of the kind of uncertainty that we are seeing in the global market led by tariffs. What kind of demand trends are emerging, especially for export markets?
Well, to give you the just an overview of where we stand as of today, the in North Indian exports from Assam and North India is up by 8.74% from January to May. These figures are available in the public domain. South India is down by about 15% for the same period. And all India exports actually from January to May is showing a marginal decline of 1.5%. However, there has been a 15% increase in the value, which actually reinforces the fact that there is value being assigned to Indian tea. There has been a 16.42% increase also in the per unit rate for exports. So we have in fact seen some gains emerging in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. This is not a definitive trend as of now. Yes, regarding the tariff issue, which you just mentioned, US as a market imports about 123 million kgs of tea. India exported about 17 million kgs last year. In fact, I was in the US 2 months back as a part of a delegation to promote Assam tea. And we participated in the Fancy Food Fair festival there. And there's a lot of demand and enthusiasm about the good teas from India. Now, with 14% market share that we have there, we are actually competing with Malawi, Argentina, and Sri Lanka, who also make orthodox tea and who are servicing this market, are in the black tea segment. Now, naturally, if the rate that is imposed on us as when it comes is substantially higher than what it is in Sri Lanka, if I know correctly, it is 20% now. It will impede our export competitiveness, given the fact that producers per se are working on very thin margins. Our capacity to absorb costs at the back end will not be possible. And therefore, if teas do find entry into in such circumstances, obviously the entire burden of the increase will have to be passed on to the consumers. So this is where it stands as of now. But there is no immediate crisis as far as demand is concerned. We are not noticing anything of that sort. It is carrying on in the normal course. But definitely, the tariff issue that you just mentioned could have some ramifications. Maybe it is a good time for us to reflect as to whether some of the issues that we have been raising to mitigate transactional cost of exports from India, where the say the ROTTEP, for instance, which is at 1.4% against the embedded tax rate of 1.9 for 5.9 for us. If that could be looked at afresh by the government, maybe that could be increased. Other export schemes could be better outlays. The orthodox subsidy scheme,
Right,
which is very, very important for creating correct product mix, because most of the teas exported are orthodox varieties. That could be brought in. And the transport subsidy, which we are talking about, because the
correct.
freight, we evacuate teas through Bengal, the bulk of the teas that come from Assam, through the ICD Amingaon. And then the empty containers going and coming, this creates a cost impact, which was being covered by a scheme which needs revision. So these are some of the policy interventions which may be considered to give us that competitive edge and help us to remain afloat.
Understood. Mr. Raha, we get that point, and there's a lot of uncertainty on what the final rate could be for tariffs on US. But if you can tell us, if at all the final rate were to be 50%, then what kind of impact will India's tea industry have? And if the US market is shut for Indian tea exporters, then which other avenues will open up for India?
See, well, let me tell you this, that look, uh, as of today, as of today, 14%, 17 million kgs on a 250 million base is important, but not something that will upset the entire market, right? That's one. The second is that if you look at the spread of our exports that have happened so far, 27 countries have made up about 91% of the exports that have happened thus far. And this is actually the CIS, which accounts for about 17%. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Turkey. These countries make up for about 49% of our exports. EU, Europe, Australia, Canada, US is about 13.9%, about 14%. And 7%, another 7% goes to, the other countries, a bit to China, some to Sri Lanka, some Afghanistan, etc. So therefore, in this spreadsheet, the component of the US exports is about 14 million. We believe that the US consumer is fond of Indian tea. There is a niche segment that is developing for high quality Indian teas. And the principle of tariff fixation normally is to protect the domestic market. The experimentation that US is doing with tea hardly caters to 0.02% of their demand. So teas will have to go to the US in any case if the consumers want it. Yes, there may be a higher price that has to be paid for it.
Understood. Mr. Raha, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us and helping us understand what the outlook is for India's tea industry going forward and the impact of tariffs that have been imposed on India. Thanks so much for joining us.